then the director of the Science Department Operations will tell us something, what is the emotion which made me to make this mistake. So we start with Markus Kissler to say hello to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much. I would have not minded skipping my turn, but I do it nevertheless. So my name is Markus Kissler-Patig. I'm the head of science and operations here, and I'm also the deputy head of ESAC. And I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Günther Hasby. And just head of establishment. So welcome to everybody. I think it's a great pleasure to celebrate this. It's very hard to speak again. So shout, okay, so bear with me. Okay, thank you. As you know, I mean, we're going to hear a lot of great stories here. I think it's very important to celebrate these kind of events. We're celebrating the 45th launch anniversary of IUE, IUE, which really was the foundation, of this center, which kicked off VILSPA, which then became ESAC later. So we're looking back at 45 years of very important history for ESA, also in Spain. And I would say, on a little personal note, I did my PhD at the University of Bonn, and Bonn had a group which actually around Klaas de Boer, I don't know if he's connected today or not, had a lot of people working on UV astronomy, on hot stars, white dwarf in particular is there. So this, for me personally, actually, IUE was the first space mission that I was connected with in the early 90s. And it was actually my very first observing run where I came to what's now the canteen, and I had to play with the joy. I mean, I was a grad student. I thought this was normal. Nowadays, I would operate things a little bit differently. Yeah, so it's how I really started also astronomy. Then I only came back to ESA 25 years later or something like that. Strangely enough, now I start to work on white dwarfs again after a gap of 25 years. But so I have a bit of a connection emotionally also with IUE, and a lot of friends. I think Armin Tyson is still around there. He used to sit in, and I see him waving. So Armin had the office next to me in Bonn, and he was actually working with IUE data at that time. I was too young. I was eventually pushed to work on globular clusters and other things in my lab. But very happy to actually have you all here. Great to see so many faces. I'm so glad that so many of you who actually worked here could make it today. And I'm looking forward to all the great stories and hearing a little bit about what historically mission operations meant, what this represented, and really a mission which was a landmark because it really started UV astronomy, which is now continued, of course, a lot with other space missions, including also Hubble, for which we are responsible. And so enjoy the afternoon, enjoy the talks, and looking forward to actually hear all these great stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Markus. I'm sorry for this diplomatic mistake I made. Now we continue, and Pablo, I'm here in IUE since the beginning. He was the head of all the computers and all the informatics and all these type of things, which meant not only the machines, but also the functioning, the people, and all that. So he will tell us some stories about how this worked and how this was so successful. Daniel.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonio. Today we have the extraordinary opportunity, after 45 years, of seeing us together again. And the only thing we can say, or I want to say, is some words about the technological legacy of IUE. And first of all, just a moment. título. Well, well, first of all, I wanted to express congratulations to everybody. Mention that it is an enormous pleasure for all of us to be able to participate in this event and to see us, so many friends, together after such an extraordinary story like it was for IUE. We wanted also to congratulate our friends of NASA for the help and support that they always provided to us. And of course, we want to praise the VILSPA, the ESAC friends here, yeah, who worked extensive and difficult times for the successful achievement of this project. These congratulations are extended to all IUE participants who could not attend to this event. And last but not least, we wish to manifest our appreciation and recognize the merits of our colleagues who, after dedicating their best efforts to IUE, passed away. So I will spend 5 minutes talking about the technological legacy of the IUE project. Along the life of the project, of the IUE project, there was a worldwide extended variety of advances in the techniques involving solid-state devices, computers, and associated hardware and software. And we all were immersed in that flow and participated in these advances. The science and engineering staff working in the project had plenty of enthusiasm and motivation to pioneer many of the important developments of that epoch. Things are easily forgotten, but we participated and we contributed significantly to some of these advances. Next, it will follow a brief summary of the outstanding contributions of the project teams to advances in the field of spacecraft operations, in the field of image processing, in the database techniques, and in the data networks and internet. First of all, on spacecraft operations, during the 19 years of IUE, successful housekeeping, maneuvering, controlling, and improving subsystems aboard the satellite, they happen many unforeseen events and complicated circumstances, which had to be studied, which had to be analyzed, and a solution had to be found. It's nearly obvious in all type of spacecraft projects nowadays, but 40 years ago, it was much harder. It was much harder because it was more difficult to find out really what was happening. It was difficult to build the maneuvers to accomplish whatever it was necessary, and so on and so forth. Of a high relevance for its impact and outcome in attitude control procedures was the studies and developments made after the failure of several gyroscopes on board of the satellite. Eventually, it remained one of them, and together with the data of the so-called fine sun sensor and the star pointing devices, it was achieved to build all the procedures which had to be done for maneuvering and for observing whatever celestial object. And part of these efforts were also transmitted to the remaining teams of attitude control and spacecraft control, and they were incorporated, some of these algorithms, in other projects. On image processing, the studies and developments performed in the context of IUE SIPS. IUE SIPS was the image processing system, and the associated ramifications. Feeds, I have some of our remote attendants will remember these systems. The studies performed there, I say, provided significant advance to the techniques in photometric calibration, in geometrical correction, and file compression, which later on was nearly, I will not say trivial, but it was just customary in two-dimensional images treatment. But that was the starting of these techniques. On database techniques, of which Enrique Solano will talk later on with much more detail, it was performed here the transition from delivering on magnetic tape the data to the observers to provide immediate and universal availability of the scientific observations to the community. As I say, Enrique will talk later on more about this database matters. Finally, I wanted to mention on data networks, the teams here, they were leading the establishment of computer interconnections and the early local area networks, which at that time was a novelty in the world. And there was a very ample exercise of collaboration with other European institutions in developments, in tests, and so on, to enhance and extend the so-called, at that time, HEPNet, which was the high energy physics net, and SPAN was together with NASA, which was the space physics analysis network that was done on protocols of the company DEC and so on and so forth. And the first networks of scientific data in Europe started to be around this HEPNet and SPAN. And later, already in the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, there was a strong collaboration with the institution Fundesco of Telefónica for the creation and setup of the Red Iris. Red Iris means the red española, de interconexión de recursos informáticos de las universidades y centros de investigación. And in that context, the first node in Spain connected to internet was one of the computers in one of the buildings here. So we can proudly say that it was the first node of internet in Spain. As from there, the history continued and so on and so forth. And today we have what you know better than me now. So thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you in the 50th anniversary. Thank you very much.
Just for your fun, this is one of the original tapes. I don't remember what was the capacity of this tape. It was some kilobytes.
No, but I remember that we had two big discs, which, by the way, were maintained and set up by some of the people who is here now. They were of this size, bigger than washing machines. And the capacity of each one of them was 49 megabytes. And we were, oh, what a capacity, 49 megabytes.
Well, talking to numbers on megabytes and bytes, I want to remember you that the computers on board IUE, they had a memory of 12 kilobytes and a spare of 8 kilobytes. And with these 12 kilobytes, we could do everything with a satellite. But now Enrique Solano will tell us some things about science. Enrique started working in IUE as image processing specialist and then became resident astronomer. He made his thesis with IUE data, of course, and well, he's one of the few people which stays still in VILSPA, in ESAC, and so he will tell us some scientific aspects of the life of the project.
Thank you, Antonio. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here today, remembering some of the IUE scientific achievements. And obviously, in a 10 minutes, presentation, it's not possible to cover all the science made by IUE. As you know, a project that was designed to work for 3 years and that lasted for more than 18 years. But also, I don't want to bore you with a lot of data, even if this is a short presentation. Even so, I don't want to bore you with a lot of data, a lot of information. We have prepared a poster there where we have tried to summarize the main IUE scientific highlights. Instead,
you have a summary there, the scripts. It will be running continuously. You can have a look at it.
Miguel. Okay. So instead, I would like to concentrate on the first, because throughout its more than 18 years of operational life, IUE had many firsts. For instance, it was the first satellite allowing visiting astronomers that worked as if they were working in a ground-based telescope, making decisions in real time. So, as a curiosity, in the early days, upon arrival, visiting astronomers were provided with a guide like this, in which, among other information, contains a map to reach ESAC, or what, as it was named then, VILSPA. And in those days, there were no M50, nor neither M50, nor M40, nor M503. And the only way to reach VILSPA from Madrid was using the winding M851 road. So on the right, you can see a map of the site with just one building, what we call now the A building, apart from the power plant and the canteen. And behind the canteen, there were bedrooms for visiting astronomers to stay during the observing campaigns. And one of the major characteristics of the IUE satellite was its fast response, its flexibility to schedule unforeseen observation, what we call the targets of opportunity. And the observation of the supernova 1987A, the brightest supernova in centuries, is a good example of this, because the first IUE spectrum was taken just 4 hours after the astronomical telegram report was issued. And this first observation was followed by continued 100 hours of observation. By the way, what you can see on the right is the first spectrum of the supernova. It's a completely useless spectrum, completely saturated. All these red points are bad pixels. But for the second observation, the exposure time was properly tuned, and that second observation was already a scientifically validated image. So in total, for more than this supernova was observed for more than 4 years, with hundreds of spectra that represent the most complete data set showing the evolution of supernovae in the ultraviolet. Also, IUE was the first space mission, astronomical mission, to work in multi-wavelength studies. In these studies, you have to coordinate different astronomical facilities, ground-based telescopes, space satellites to work together and to make observations almost in a simultaneous way, covering a wide range in the electromagnetic spectrum. And IUE was the first satellite doing these things. Here you can see a couple of examples of these campaigns. The ROSAT was a satellite in the X-rays, ROSAT IUE on sky survey, and the International AGN Watch. In both cases, these campaigns focused on active galactic nuclei. On the right, you can see the evolution of one of these objects at different wavelengths from top to bottom, X-rays, ultraviolet, optical, and radio. And if we focus now on if we concentrate now on the archive, IUE was the first astronomical observatory with fully calibrated data. Fully reduced data were delivered just within 24 hours after downlink, which is a big challenge. So delivering fully reduced data implies that astronomers could focus on data analysis instead of spending time trying to correct instrumental effects or trying to calibrate the spectra. Some years later, in the 80s, IUE was the first astronomical mission having an online archive, much before the web advent. So we are in the 80s, the World Wide Web didn't exist yet. So the way how astronomers could make a query to this system and retrieve the information of interest was something like this. They have to, with this command set host, they have to connect to a remote server, and in a command line mode, they have to access a menu, which is on the left. And from this menu, you can select those spectra of your interest, that spectra that were later retrieved to their machine. And one of the main legacies of IUE was its final archive, INES. So the idea of this archive was to deliver fully reduced data to an astronomical community as wide as possible. And keeping this in mind, the idea was to design a two-level system: a principal host, a principal center hosted here, VILSPA, and a number of national hosts distributed worldwide. And this was necessary because at that time, in the 90s, 1890s, the internet connectivity had nothing to do with what we have now. So it was necessary to have these national hosts distributed in different countries for the local communities access at least a high percentage of the information that was stored there. And the success of this system was demonstrated by the fact that in just 3 years after the first release of INES, the number of files retrieved from the archive was twice the number of total contents of the archive. And with the turn of the century, the INES system was moved from ESAC to INTA, in particular to LIFE, which is now part of the Centro de Astrología, which is this part of the building. And also, INES was one of the first spectroscopic archives in the virtual observatory. Interoperability is the magic word in virtual observatories. And this concept, interoperability, was already embedded in the system architecture because INES was able to talk, to exchange information in a seamless way with other systems like ADS. And living in the virtual observatory world allows IUE data to be discovered by virtual observatory tools and can be easily compared with other data sets produced by other missions, as you can see on the right. And I would like to dedicate my last slide to the memory of William Weinstecker, the IUE observatory controller for many years. In particular, now I would like to focus on the training aspect, because from the very beginning, William encouraged students for Madrid universities to come here to do their PhD here under the supervision of IUE staff and use the observatory facilities at the time when those facilities were just a dream at the universities. So there's a whole generation of astronomers, including myself, who benefit from this initiative, this Williams initiative. And also, William was the person who signed the first collaboration agreements with the universities, which somehow was the origin of the ESAC traineeship program that is currently working. So thank you, William, and thank you to all of you for your attention.
These were the foreseen presentations. Now, before any spontaneous collaboration that may arise in the room, I want to acknowledge Isa for hosting us here, and Benjamin and Miguel for acting as local committee who have prepared everything we have here. So, any voluntary? Mariano. Well, I'm going to introduce you because you are very well known by everybody.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm not going to talk about IUE from a scientific point of view. I'm just going to tell you a little bit that before the scientists were able to do anything with the IUE, a group of people started to prepare a fantastic tracking station so we could do the job for helping the scientists to get the spectra from the IUE. We started here in 1976 in November, myself as maintenance and operation of supervisor with 10 persons from INTA. There were electricians, everybody that could give the service. The first person to come and stay here, and I want just to remember him, was Andres Ripoll and Elisa. They were the only two persons that were here when we arrived. Unfortunately, we found that in the middle of Elisa's office, Telefonica has installed a 3 meters telephone exchange. So that was the first thing. We had to move to some place, and from there on, we started to really prepare the station. The station, many people remember, report stayed with muddy road in the path to come here before the nice road was made, and we had to get somebody with a tractor and pull the car into the station. That was something that we always remember when we really inaugurated the new road. So from there on, we started preparing. We had something, and we have here also an ex-director of VILSPA. We signed together to get a life in Villafranca. That was another very important point for this station. Bringing also some of the old data sitting someplace in ESTEC, moving them into Villafranca was really the base. So all the scientific data can be in Villafranca now, and we have this beautiful ESAC. So I had to thank you very much for all the people. Some of them have passed away. When we started, we launched IUE, we went from 10 to 78 people. Now, when I left the station, we were something like 200 and some, but was after the IUE was really terminated. Just the last anecdotic thing. When IUE, NASA, and ESA, and also SRC decided that we had to terminate it, 2 years before, the scientific director came to me and said, "Why do you have so many millions of pesetas someplace in our budget?" I said, "Well, this is the money that I had to pay indemnization to the people who had to terminate when IUE terminates. He said, well, I'm going to use it, but you ask for it when you have this need. So when the day came, he said, I don't have the money. So what we had to do is to reduce the time of operation, and with this money, we were able to pay all the indemnization. So I think we did a good job. Everybody that we had to hand over to the next generation. Thank you very much.
We have about 40, 50 people connected to Zoom. If anybody wants to say something, we can try. So you can go and say something if you want. Who will be the first?
Can anyone say something just to check that the sound is okay?
Here, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, since I had the honor to be one of the first resident astronomer working in Villafranca, together with Pierluigi Selvelli and others, but connected is, I think, is only Pierluigi of that group. I just want to remind you, or everybody who was not there at the time, that when we started, the road to arrive to Villafranca was in a disastrous shape. And I remember that the technical people went even on strike to protest about the status of the road to have access to the station. But then soon after launch, there was the formal inauguration of the station. And we had the honor to have the visit of the King and Queen of Spain. And so in order to prepare their arrival at the Villafranca, all of a sudden, in a matter of 1 week, the road was paved. And since it was a bit winding around, every curve, every turn of the road had a street signal indicating the curve or the turning of the road. And then the other nice thing was that the terrain around the cafeteria was also in a terrible shape. And when it was raining, rarely, but when it was raining, it was really difficult to move around. And then exactly that, it was in 1 day, it was beautifully covered with green grass, not artificial, but really, and it was paved with everything, and everything was perfectly set up for the visit of the Queen and the King. So that was a memory that I have, and I want to share with all the people that came after that, and they saw the station in a very much better shape than that. And then the other thing I want to say is that after the road was completed, there was, we had the, I think it was Andres Ripoll, who unfortunately passed away, that asked to put a very big sign at the exit of the gate, indicating that the British people has to drive on the right, because we saw a lot of people that after the shift during the night, they were just driving home, starting on the left, and so that was a possibility of causing disaster. So that was the other anecdote that I want to share with you. And it was really, it's really a pleasure to see a lot of nice faces that I now recognize, and we have been really sharing a fantastic time with this beautiful satellite. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piero. Anybody else?
Can I say something about the impact on the studies of supernova 1987A that was made by IUE, that produced thousands of spectra that allowed to see the ultraviolet precipitate in terms of luminosity in the first hours after the explosions. And these things had been predicted theoretically, but never observed before. And well, many of us at the time worked on these, and we were part of the discussion and the understanding of which one of the three stars that were inside the large aperture was actually the progenitor of the supernova. That was one of the interesting parts that only IUE could do at the time. So I just wanted to remember and remind how much IUE has helped us producing good science and making new discoveries.
Thank you, Roberto. Anybody else? Also, in the room, is there anybody who wants to say something? Well, if not, we shall close this part and we will pass to. Yeah.
For the people who are connected, we are leaving a collection of photos. So maybe you want to stay looking at the 100 and something pictures covering more than 50 years of the station.
So we shall pass to have a cup of coffee and to say hello to everybody here. Thank you very much again to all of you for coming, for being remotely with us. And well, I look forward to see you in 5 years, here or somewhere else.
Estaba